Today, we're going to take a look at transferring a colony from a national box over onto a langstroth box. And we're going to use the system of shook swarming to do it. So basically, I'm just moving this national box to one side. And in its place, I'm going to put a floor and a queen excluder over the floor to keep the queen in situ. So the queen excluder is left in there for a week, and after a week, once the queen has started laying, I can remove that queen excluder. And I'm just making sure it's sitting on properly and there's no chance that the queen will slide out or get around it. So here I have a box with some drawn frames and some undrawn frames. So I've removed a few frames from the center to make a bit of room to work. And now I'm taking the bees off that old colony where I wanted to change out all the frames, and I'm just shaking the bees into the box. Take a quick look at the frame to make sure the queen isn't on it. And in this case, it's just a frame of pollen. The queen hasn't come across onto that frame yet, but I'm giving a quick check to make sure she's not there. Once I'm sure she's not, shake the bees into the box off the frame. So now we're down as far as the brood nest. So again, I'm checking to make sure that the queen is not on this frame. These particular frames have a nice bit of wax moth in them under the cappings, and there were quite a lot of bees with deformed wing virus. So to give them the best chance possible, we're just shook swarming the same way as you would change the sheets in the bed. Queen is not on the frame, so I'm going to give it a shake and all bees off the frame into the box. We are going to forfeit the brood in this box, but it's in the best interest of the bees going forward. So now we're down to one of the frames in the middle of the box, and the queen is on this frame. So there she is at the bottom of the frame there with a blue dot up on her back. And we have her circled there with a yellow circle just to identify her. Now it's early in the season. There are no drones in this colony. So if we wished to change that queen at a later stage, we could put a mated queen in later on in the season. So I'm just going to take the queen off the frame and we're going to put her into the box. You can use a queen catcher for it, or you could pick her up with your fingers. Obviously, there's missed her there because she moved. And there she is. She's gone in between the side frame and the wax on the frame itself. You can see her there by the purple gloves. She's coming around again there now. So we can just pick her up and put her in on top of the frames. So she slipped down there on top of the frame, but you can see her going out over the top of the frame and down into the darkness of the box. Now we know she's gone into the box, we can safely shake all the other bees into the box and get the job done. So I'll speed it up here, just get the rest of the bees shaken off the frames so that we can close that box up. Right. So now you can see that the bees are balling up around the outside entrance and the outside front of the box there. The queen is inside in the box. They can smell her pheromone inside in the box and they will stay there with her. So we can close that gap now in the middle as soon as we have as many bees as possible into the box. And if you don't have some drawn frames to do this, you could give them undrawn frames. So here I had 5 drawn frames, but we're also going to put a couple of undrawn frames into that box to make up the difference. You can see bees going in there with pollen on them. But they are gathering around the entrance. They know the queen is in that box. So I'm just putting a frame on both sides of the brood chamber with just undrawn wax in it. And now we have two frame feeders on the outside of that brood box as well. So I've brought a bucket of sugar syrup made up with a 50-50 1-to-1 ratio, and I'm going to fill those feeders with the sugar syrup. Now we put some sticks into the feeders so that once the syrup goes in, the sticks will float at the top and the bees won't drown inside the syrup. Each of those feeders takes 3 litres. So we try and pour it in slowly so we don't spill any syrup in the apiary. And if we did, it would cause robbing. So you can see the sticks now are starting to float inside in the feeder once the syrup comes up to the top. So that's 3 litres of syrup gone into this side, and I'll put another 3 litres of syrup into the second feeder. That second feeder looks narrow, but once the syrup goes into it, it will widen out. So now again that it's starting to widen out, and the sticks that are inside it are starting to float up to the top. Again, they're there so the bees don't drown. So we've given that particular colony 6 litres of syrup to keep it going so that it's got enough of syrup to start drawing wax for the queen to lay up the rest of those frames. So we'll just give a small bit of smoke there to get the bees out of the way. And we put on the crown board. Now, this colony now has no brood. So this would be an optimum time to give it a varroa treatment. And here we see a product called Varroa Med. It's a mixture of formic acid and oxalic acid pre-mixed in a container. And because there's no brood, it's an ideal time to treat for varroa. So here we are just drizzling it in between the frames of bees. Job done. We leave the colony closed up for a week to give the queen time to lay and to let the varroa med work. And those bees that are gathered on the outside of the colony will go in, and the varroa med that's dripping off the inside of the frames will cover them as well. All we need to do now is put the cover on. Thanks for your attention.